The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
It's right about time again to swerve again, confuse the general fans again.
It's funny because within the last few years I found an old magazine, like a new wave wrestling that Sandy DeLuca had done, like my first magazine interview, and it said, she asked, if you had the choice, would you want to go to WCW or WWF? And I said, absolutely WCW, because I want to be a wrestler and not a cartoon character, And it's funny to look back at that, because then I went on to become like this huge over-the-top cartoon. But I think once you get it and you experience the entertainment side and you realize that I could get 10 times the reaction off doing the moonwalk than I could from doing a moonsault. It was
Scott, and not only that, I mean, bro, let's face it. And listen, I think we're going through that again, to be honest with you. And I experienced that a lot through my later years in TNA. Like everybody wants to be a wrestler again. I mean, NXT, I think we're going through that phase. But bro, I want one person to show me where a wrestler earned more money than a cartoon character. Because at the end of the day, Scott, listen, when you got into this as a 15-year-old, you loved it. You loved the wrestling. Right. But Scott, bro, as you get older, it's a business and it's dollars and cents. And what do I have to do to make the most money with my talent? And, that's why it blows my mind when people, we want to be wrestlers. We want to be wrestlers, because I'm like, well, bro, you got to look at this as a business. You want to make money, don't you? Right.
And I always said, characters sell tickets. Wrestling doesn't sell tickets. We call it wrestling, but I always say, look at my 10-year-old son. He's the audience. These other guys, these grown men on the internet writing their reviews and tearing us apart, and the stuff. That's a small part of it. The 10-year-old boy is who you need to figure out, how do I get him to like me? And that's my speech when I worked at NXT a couple times as a guest trainer, and I said, you guys just got to go out there on these live events and just try stuff, because still to this day, when I go through the curtain on an indie show, I pretend that nobody there knows who I am, and I need to figure out, how am I going to make these people like me? And you got to give them something, because if it's their first time at a show, say they're going to see at least 20 wrestlers. They're going to see 3 referees, 3 managers, a ring announcer, all these different personalities. You have to give them something besides a clothesline, remember you. And they're probably not going to remember your name. So you got to give them something, whether it's your outfit or a move, and for me, thankfully, it was the worm, and it's not like I sat down with the worm and go, this is going to be my thing, and people are going to love it. It's something that, thankfully, it landed in my lap, and it worked, and Jerry Lawler said WORM one night as I'm hopping around to set up for it, and I heard the playback, and I said, I think if you keep doing that, they'll start, they'll start chanting it. And sure enough, they did, and then the who, that's me just being blown up at the end of the match, suck and win, and they'd start. I think the worm would have run its course a lot sooner if it wasn't for that stuff, bringing the fans in.
Absolutely.
Phrases and Austin's catchphrases. It brought them into the match, and the worm, it's so weird.
Yeah, and Scott, I was
go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Finish up. Go ahead.
It's weird because the worm almost became bigger than the character itself, I felt like, and I don't think they knew what to do with it, because you have this mid-card guy with this goofy move that's getting this massive reaction, but we can't have him beating our top guys with it. So I think it was something that I don't know if they've ever really dealt with something like that, and it was kind of a weird thing, but I could go out there.
Yeah, and it's funny, Scott, because that's a lost art today. Getting the fans involved, bro. The only one, there's the little group, and you work down in NXT, that Amore guy. They come out there. It's beautiful. It's so refreshing. What's old is new again. Nobody does that anymore. But I mean, my God, Scott, let's dive into this a little bit. something so simple, like you said, the worm, it happened organically.
Right.
Lawler said the thing, we get the people involved. Something so simple makes Scott, makes Scotty Too Hotty, Scott Taylor, the most money he's ever made in the wrestling business. Scott, why do you think that's become a lost art today?
I don't know. That's a good question, because if you look at every boom, it wasn't, whether it was the Hogan era, the Attitude era, whatever, it was character based, in the Hogan era, you had the Boss Man and DiBiase and Jake the Snake and Coco Beware and the British Bulldog, so I don't get it. I don't understand why we're not there, and that's when, I love Bray Wyatt. I love.
Unbelievable.
So I'm hoping we're going back that way. I don't know. It just seems to me like it's so obvious. Wrestling, like I said, wrestling does not sell tickets. And you could show my son the most awesome 1 hour technical Iron Man match, and he'd be bored out of his mind.
Yeah. Yeah, Scott. And, unfortunately, Scott, I don't know. Something happened along the way where, the smaller minority with the loudest voice, the internet wrestling community, which we always used to ignore. Vince used to get hot at us if we used to read a dirt sheet. He used to get hot at us. Somehow, some way, they've taken control of the business. I don't know how that happened, but And Scott, it's like you said, it's so obvious. The more emphasis that is put on wrestling, the lower the ratings drop. I mean, anybody can see that, but yet we keep going in that direction. And I'm like you, I'm sitting here scratching my head, like, what don't you understand? It's in black and white.
Right. Yeah, I don't get it. Yeah.
Hey, Scott, I want to ask you this, and this is a little bit of a touchy subject, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't want to ask you. Listen, Scott, I don't watch WWE, much these days. I do basically because I have to with this show and everything. I have to know what's going on. I'm not a fan of today's product. I mean, I'm just not. But I was down in California for WrestleMania weekend. I was working with a group, and I sat there and I watched the Hall of Fame ceremony, and I saw Rikishi got inducted, and there was no mention of you guys. And then I saw your tweets online, and I saw that and like you said, no, it wasn't a matter. I get this all the time. There's a big difference between being pissed off and being hurt. There's a huge difference. And you had to clarify that, saying, I'm not pissed. I'm just hurt. We were a team. We were a family. You almost said, listen, I don't expect to get inducted in the Hall of Fame, but a mention would. I mean, Scott, what do you think was the reasoning behind that? Have you ever gotten a chance to talk to him? I mean, has he reached out to you since? I don't understand that.
Yeah, it goes back to we did a England tour late last year, and the promoter over there, I brought my son over with me for 10 days, and he just paid for everything, took care of us, great guy, works in a bank, promised me everything and more. He was a good guy. And then at the end of the thing, Rikishi said that he had gotten treated differently and started blasting the guy on social media when we got back, and so I was like, man, you can't, saying he owed him more money, and the guy's a banker, you know what I mean? You can't go saying that somebody works in the bank industry stole money from you. So I sent out a message, just nothing about Rikishi. I sent something out thanking him, and I think Rikishi took that the wrong way, and it escalated from there. Well, anyways, so in February, Brian and I went back for the guy, and we did 3 more weeks, just the 2 of us, and Rikishi was pissed off about that. And let me say this. Let me say, wrestling is like family. I love him. But what happened at the like you said, all I wanted was a mention. First of all, I wanted to be there, an invite to sit in the audience with the fans, even, and watch the guy who we made magic with. And I think one of my tweets was, Brian and I in November of '99 at Survivor Series, Brian and I were still Scott Taylor and Brian Christopher. We were kind of too cool, but we were still. If you go back, JR calls me Scott Taylor in the Survivor Series match. So that's the end of '99. And in January of 2000, the three of us danced in the Royal Rumble. Well, we brought the Royal Rumble to a standstill, and it was, if you go back, it was electric. So in a matter of 2 months, we went from being basically obsolete in the wrestling business, the three of us, to 2 months later, we have Madison Square Garden sold out in the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble at a standstill with the whole place on their feet, clapping, watching us dance. And people in something that people still ask me about today is the Rumble. And then to not be, just not to be there. I didn't want to present his Hall of Fame to him. He has two sons there, and I would absolutely want my sons to do the same if they were working for the company. I didn't want to. It wasn't that. It wasn't. I didn't want to be on camera. I just wanted to be there, be a part of it, be invited. And then I wasn't watching the show, and this is what happened. I was at Disney, imagine that, with my kids, and my Twitter starts lighting up that, can't believe Rikishi didn't mention Too Cool, so if I regret anything, it's going to Twitter and making it a public issue. But what I said, everything I said, I stand by to this day, but all I wanted was a mention, not even a thank you, just, hey, we did this together, and and not that we made them, not that I made him, we made each other. The three of us came together and made magic. And it was a sucky situation, and I hope you go back to with Roddy passing away, and life's too short. I hope someday we can walk up to each other and he can either hit me or hug me.
Hey, Scott, like I said, I love him. It's funny. I swear, bro. It's like Roddy Piper had heat with me for 15 years, and I had no idea in the world what it was. Finally, he reached out to me and wanted me to go on his podcast, about 9 months ago or whatever. Yeah. So, of course, it's Roddy Piper. I don't have heat with him. I don't even know what the issue is, right? Right. So, bro, I go on Piper's show, and, he goes on to tell me this story of in 1999 when I worked my first show with him at WCW, my writing partner, Ed Ferrara. Right. Approached Roddy in the locker room before I did. And Roddy took that as a total sign of disrespect. And I'm like, Roddy, wait a minute. I'm like, first of all, two things. Ed Ferraro literally beat me to you. He basically got there before I did. I said, but secondly, 15 years have to go by for me to learn this? You know what I'm saying, bro? It's like, how silly is that? Why didn't you say something that night, Vince? I feel like you disrespected me. And right then and there, I could have said, Roddy, I'm sorry. He got to you before I did. But, bro, 15 years of heat built and festered. But you know what, Scott? Here's the unfortunate thing. Bro, the older and older I get, I love to put people over. I get joy out of putting people over. But my gosh, bro, it just seems like professional wrestling. It's so hard for wrestlers to put people over. I understand they're independent contractors. That's the way they've been raised. So they've got to be self-promoters and always put themselves first. I get that. But it's like, bro, as you get older, man, you have to give props to people that were a huge part of your success.
Yeah. That's how I felt, man. That's how I felt, and then mention us, and then to do the three-way dance and his son to do the worm. And I would have been absolutely cool with it if we had just gotten the mention. It's not a knock on the boys. It felt like it was pouring salt in the wounds to do the dance after not being mentioned. And like you said, I was pissed, but it was more hurt. Like, I can't believe he didn't mention it. He had time to put his wrestling school over and other guy and Gangrel and other guys. But
Yeah. Well, Scott, I don't want to dwell on that negativity. I mean, it is what it is, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. And I think, bro, you put your feelings out there, how you felt. I do that all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. Scott, I want to ask you this because I was like shocked to read this. I know towards the tail end of your career in the WWE, your career is still going on. You're still a young man, bro. Unbelievable.
Right.
Which, you started in high school. That makes sense.
Right.
But you had some really bad, devastating neck, back injuries towards the end of your career, correct?
Yeah, well, I had the neck surgery in 02, and then I had the back. I had the real one was a back injury in 07, which led to my release.
Yeah.
I was 1 year into a 3-year contract, and I got cleared to go back for my back injury, and they called and said we don't, creative has nothing for you, of course. But, that was the only thing that ever I was ever really pissed off. I was like, come on, man, I've been here for 16 years since the first day I walked into this locker room. Give me something else. You know what I mean?
Scotty, yeah, bro. I say this all the time. The creative has nothing for me is the biggest BS line in the history of the business, because when you look at it on the surface, if creative has nothing for a WWE superstar who earned their right to be on the roster, who should be let go, the superstar or the guy on creative? Like, right. I get so sick of hearing creative had nothing for me. Just shoot straight with the guy and tell him why he's being released. The heat always goes to creative, which is just mind-boggling to me.
And we know what it is. It's probably a legal thing where it's, legally you can't argue that, where if they say, oh, we're letting you go because you have a back injury, there's a potential for a lot. And I just felt like I deserved better after all that time, but I'm cool with it. I have a great relationship with him now, and it's cool to be able to, I'm in Orlando, so I take my daughter to the NXT, and it's so cool to see, just to watch it through my son's eyes. Now, I actually, just a couple of months ago, I went and we sat in the crowd, and, I had a baseball hat on, and we watched the show from the crowd, and it was with my son. It was really, really, really cool. So
cool.
I'm in an awesome spot.
But Scott, I want to ask you. I found this fascinating. So bro, listen. I worked a lot with Kurt Angle, the greatest guy in the world, and bro, let's face it. That the neck and the back, those are probably the worst injuries, especially in wrestling, that anybody could go through. I have to ask you this because I thought this was absolutely fascinating. Having a neck injury and having a back injury, but then, bro, wanting to become a firefighter. Like honestly, like, how did that even happen? And how could you possibly think, okay, I'm going to be able to pass every physical and I'm going to be able to pass every test? I mean, bro, we're not talking about a bum elbow. We're talking about your neck and your back. So I'm real interested to hear about that transition.
Yeah, it was. I ran into a friend of mine who's a firefighter in a Panera one day, and he said, "Yeah, you ought to do it. The schedule's great. That's like I said, 24 on, 48 off, and you get 20 years in, you get a pension." So I thought, I'll check it out. Went home, looked at the school online, signed up that day, put myself through the fire school, put myself through EMT, and I killed, man. I think there were 40 people in my class, and I had the best time in the physical part. And I'm talking with 20-year-old kids, and I just kid, but it was more for me than it was for anybody else. I just wanted to prove that I could beat these guys. But honestly, I after the back injury, it forced me to start training differently. I'm in better shape now than when I actually left WWE. I'm about 20 pounds lighter, but I just train differently. No heavy weights. I do a lot of cardio in between sets, and my conditioning is real good. But I had to start training differently after the back injury.
Yeah.
So it was never really a question. I mean, the biggest disappointment with a fire school was that there wasn't more physical part. I thought we were going to do a lot more, and we didn't. But
Scott, you did go on to become a full-fledged fireman, right?
No, I went through the schooling, and then I went to the fire school. Then I went through the 2-month EMT school. Never ended up passing my EMT Florida state test. And I started volunteering and just realized that the fire thing wasn't going to be for me. And I kind of, that's what I was saying. I went back to they brought us back for the old school Raw, you know, and I kind of got bit by the bug again.
Yeah.
I picked up a show, you know, at this point I was pretty much committed to being a firefighter and have the kind of letting the wrestling thing go. And I did a show over in Scotland. And I mean, this sounds corny and goofy and everything, but I got on a plane and I flew about 14 hours to get there. It took me 3 flights to get there. And I got off the plane and these 2 guys picked me up. They were super cool. You know, everything paid for. They had me staying in a Marriott. I'm making decent money. And they took me to an appearance, you know, and I get there. And this is my first time in Scotland after, you know, I did 1 show, I think, with WWE there. And we get to the pub. And there's a line, Vince, and I'm like, wow, like this is pretty cool. And then I can remember, and this is the moment, I had a guy, and this is the part that sounds goofy, but I had a guy, a grown man with his kid, and he wanted to do a photo with me. And I'm standing close enough to where we're touching, and I can feel this grown man shaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, and at that moment, I thought, here I am making decent money, staying in a Marriott, getting, you know, going and looking at castles in Scotland, getting paid to live my dream, and I'm going to let it go. And I thought, I'm going to keep going, you know, and that's what so I started taking more book. And that's what kind of sucks. Sometimes I feel like, you know, I do these indie shows now, and, you know, some of them are Knights of Columbus Hall, and you feel like you're living in the movie The Wrestler, getting changed in the kitchen or whatever. But man, I'll tell you what, if it's a small place and there's 500 people crammed in there and they're electric, it's just as good as working the Sky Dome in front of 68,000. It really is. People don't believe that.
No, Scott, I got to tell you, I went through the same thing, you know, where you know, my roots where I started, kind of just like you, as a 15-year-old kid with the rings, you know, do your WrestleManias and everything, bro. 6 months ago, I found myself in England, in a little makeshift club, with 100 people there. But, bro, it reminded me of all the reasons I got into the business in the first place. Like, it literally took me full circle, you know, made a complete circle, and I was right back where I started. And I just sat back for a minute, and I'm like, you know what? I could sit here and say, oh, my God, how the mighty have fallen. I did WrestleMania. But no, this is the roots. This is why I got into it. And, bro, you know, you know too, Scott, you know, being around those 20-year-old kids with stars in their eyes and they want to be the next big thing. I mean, to me, I love that aspect of it, you know? Yeah, for sure. And I still, you know, it's such a cool vehicle. And I always say, like, you know, like I told you, 2000 was definitely the peak. That's 2000 what allows me still to go to Scotland now, you know, but right now I'm probably at the most enjoyable part of my career where I can kind of step back and just kind of enjoy it. You know, for example, and then I told you I took my son to England for 10 days last year. What an awesome trip, man. We went to Stonehenge, did all these cool things. He got to be on the road. He got to hang out in the hotel rooms, you know, and make the road trips with me. And, you know, and then he actually did meet a lot together. He got in there and he did the dance with us. Like, so how cool is that, you know? You know, and then this November, I have 2 weekends in a row in England. I have a show on a Sunday, and then the following weekend I have a show on a Saturday and Sunday. So I'm gonna take my 13-year-old daughter over. We're gonna fly over. We'll get there Saturday. We'll do the show on Sunday, and then we're gonna fly to Paris for the week, and then fly back and do the other 2 shows. So it's a good life, man. It really is. Yeah, Scott, especially with you, the great thing, man, you know, with you is 2 things. Number 1, through it all, you're healthy, and number 2, bro, you're only 42. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you are still so young, having started so young in high school. Man, at 42 and being healthy now, that's a blessing, bro.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, you know, I went through those injuries, but I'm in great shape now. I really am. Like, I'm very thankful, you know.
Well, Scott, listen, for those that want to follow you, you know, see where you're going to be appearing, what you're going to be doing next, how can they follow you on social media?
Everything is Twitter is at the Scotty Too Hotty, and then the Facebook is the Scotty Too Hotty. Instagram is the Scotty Too Hotty, and I'm pretty reachable. You know, my email's attached to all those. You know, so everybody's pretty reachable these days, I think. So yeah, that's the big one is the Twitter, though, I guess.
Now, can fans bribe you and basically, you know, invite you to Disney World, all expenses paid, if you just go and hang out with them for the day?
That'd be cool. Yeah, if they want to pay me to come hang up with them, we'll give it to Give Kids the World. So I'm actually out here right now in Cocoa Beach. I did an event here last night, a gambling cruise with about 15 reality stars, people from Survivor.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Big Brother. Now you think wrestlers are crazy, man? You should deal with some of these people. They're awesome. Like, we had a great time last night. We did this gambling cruise, and tonight we go over to Celebration. This whole weekend is raising money for Give Kids the World, which is an organization. Make-A-Wish sends the kids here. Give Kids the World is an actual village where they put families up for a week and send them to the theme parks. But right now we've raised $109,000 for this weekend. Wow.
Yeah.
We have a People Magazine party tonight at 9:00 in Celebration, and then tomorrow we go to Gatorland, and then we actually go to Give Kids the World. Saturday, we have an autograph signing in Celebration, and back to the whole wrestling reality thing. Now there's about 100 reality stars and me at this thing. Robert, you know, I think the only other people are Robbie E. And the other, I can't think of his name, Mr. Spectacular there. Bro, but they both did reality shows.
Bro, you know? Stay away from those guys. Especially this Robbie E character is nothing but trouble. Stay completely. Listen, bro, you think Brian Christopher was a handful? Stay away from Robbie E. That's my advice to you.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me today, man. It was absolutely great to catch up. Listen, I want to thank you for doing the interview. I want to thank you for the years of having the opportunity and the honor and the privilege of working with you. You were both a scholar and a gentleman, and I enjoyed our time together. Scotty Too Hotty, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Vince. It was great to talk to you, man. Thank you very much.
All right, and everybody else, as always, I'll catch you on the rebound. This comes from why I have heat with JBL to this day. Okay, I was in the back. It was me and somebody else, and I don't remember who it was. And JB started carrying on that he could take anybody in the company or in the locker room in a real bar fight. Okay, now first of all, like, I was not a big fan of JBL personally. I thought he was a big bully. I thought he was a loudmouth. So all I had to do was sit back and hear him say how he could take anybody in a bar fight. Now, keep in mind, while he's saying this, I know some of the guys in the locker room. And while he's saying this, I say to myself, you know what? I'd love to see that. You know, so sure enough, the next TV session with Vince, I pitched it. I said, Vince, listen, I pitched the whole idea of the Brawl for All. You know, let's do this. Guys were bonused if they did it. They got more money. That was the enticement to do it. It was so funny because, like, the first rounds, being in the arena, people thought it was a work. People were like, what? Why are they dimming the lights? Why are they doing this? They thought it was an absolute work. By the time Bart Simpson started rolling guys' eyes in the back of their head, Bart gun, yeah. People knew it was not a work anymore. And to see Bart drop JBL, I'm not going to say that was a sad day. I thought it was a great day. This is what I'll never forget, though, man. I swear I'll never forget this. The Godfather. Yeah. This is a guy that's the real deal. This guy will kill you. I mean, he's the real deal. I'll never forget. I mean, literally, anybody can go back and look. Bart hit him so hard, his eyes rolled to the back. I never in my life
saw anybody get hit that hard. Nobody in the world expected any of that from Bart Gunn. Nobody. He wasn't even on anybody's radar.
Right. Is there a faction of wrestlers that are not participating in this that think this is taking up time on the show?
Not really, because they want to see these.
They want marks
Oh,
for it.
absolutely, yeah. And another big controversy too, huge controversy was Mero, because Mero wasn't a guy that was liked in the locker room because of Sable, and he was a Gold Gloves legitimate boxer. Mero was, and he felt that he beat JBL beforehand, and he felt that he got totally screwed out of the victory, because nobody liked him,
right.
And he was hot. I mean, he was legitimately hot.